The other day, I was riding through a built-up area when I suddenly heard someone in a loud voice shout, and I quote, "Get off the bike, you fat..." Well, I'll leave you to use your imagination about the exact word, but to give you a clue, it was Anglo-Saxon in origin and the sort of word a doctor with Tourette's might use. Now, seeing as I was the only fat cyclist in the vicinity, I assumed that his remark was directed at me, and it made me wonder why someone would shout something like that at a total stranger. Now, he could of course actually been a doctor with Tourette's voicing his concern about my well-being, or perhaps even a bike designer, albeit a rather angry one, worried that I was approaching the weight limit of my frame. But on reflection, I think that he was probably what I would call a fat hater. Haters in general will hate for all kinds of reasons, but a fat hater specifically feels the need to ridicule someone because of their weight or their size. I know from comments on some of my other films that many of you have encountered similar people. But I'll be honest and say that in all my years of cycling, this was the first time that I personally have ever heard somebody actually shout something like that in real life. But hey, I run a YouTube channel, so I'm not a complete stranger to mindless abuse. To a certain extent, us overweight cyclists are fairly easy targets. We ride around in public wearing skin-tight Lycra that leaves little to the imagination. If you've eaten so much as half a rasher of bacon, a tight-fitting cycling jersey will show it off for all to see, and I won't even begin to list what can be revealed with a tight pair of Lycra shorts. Unless you are a full-on chiselled Adonis, I would argue that few people actually look all that good in Lycra. And even if you were some kind of mythical Greek god, there will always be someone, somewhere that will find another reason to dislike you. Probably because you were a chiselled Adonis, or simply because you're a cyclist, or because you don't quite conform to their narrow vision of normal. It would be very sad indeed if these people prevented you from doing something that at the end of the day is actually incredibly good for you. Many people are put off from cycling or indeed doing any form of exercise because they're worried about what other people will think of them or because they feel self-conscious. To try and put things into some kind of perspective, other people fall into two very general broad types when they see me, a fat cyclist. They're either incredibly supportive or they just accept me and go about their usual business without any fuss. The fat haters actually form a very small minority. What you need to remember about these people is that they're trying to make themselves feel good. And the only way they can do that is by trying to make you feel bad. Their lives are so empty and devoid of any happiness, they only feel good when they have made someone else feel as bad as they do. As such, they need our compassion rather than our anger. Yeah, but then I'm not a very compassionate person. If it was down to me, I would lock them up in a room and force them to watch the same episode of Emmerdale Farm on an endless loop from now until the end of time. Unfortunately, according to the judge at my trial, we have laws against forcing people to watch rural soap operas, no matter how much they might deserve it. So on the rare occasions that we might experience a fat hater, we'll have to find a better, more socially acceptable and, I may add, legal way to deal with them. Now, the knee-jerk reaction would be to say something witty and clever back to them, but there are a couple of reasons why I would not recommend this. Firstly, you have to be quick-witted enough to actually think of something to say. Secondly, they would probably not understand it anyway. And finally, and most importantly, it might also be the quickest way to escalate the incident into something far more serious. Plus, if you think about it, you've also played directly into their hands by showing them that they've got to you. For what it's worth, I would initially suggest doing absolutely nothing and simply riding on as if you hadn't heard them. You're not only showing your class, but you'll also be saying to the hater that you've risen above their ignorance and you're not going to play their game. Unfortunately, we can't control what other people say, but we can, to a certain extent, control what we feel about it. Ideally, we should turn their words around and use them for something positive. When that person shouted at me the other day, I had the overwhelming desire to go out and prove him wrong. He actually made me want to ride my bike even more. At the end of the day, it was me getting the benefit of the exercise, not him. And if I stopped riding because of one thoughtless Neanderthal, I would be the one losing out. I didn't want him and people like him to win. So if you want to go out and ride the bike, go out and ride the bike, and don't let other people stop you. The reality is that most of them will either be very supportive or at least not care what you look like. On the extremely rare off chance that someone might make a comment because you aren't some kind of chiselled Adonis, then just take a close look at them and wonder what's missing from their lives. Thanks for watching.